Welcome back, folks. Let's go ahead and take a look at our CSV that we just exported from OpenRocket. Now, the idea here is that this is going to be for people that want to make their own freeform wings. If you want to do trapezoidal wings, we'll talk more about that in another video. But let's get a load of this. Okay, so one of the most important skill sets that an engineer needs to develop is, people have different names, but essentially data conditioning, or cleaning up the numbers from one program so that the next program can use them. So if we look at the export from OpenRocket, it has our X coordinates right here in this column and the Y coordinates in this column. Now, the way Fusion is going to be looking for this information is it only wants numbers, no text. So this column, or sorry, this row right here that says X in, Y in, that is not going to work for us. We need to delete that. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that row. Okay. The next thing is, the way Fusion works is it's actually a 3D modeling software. So it's actually expecting 3 columns, X, Y, and then Z. Now we're going to be loading all of this into essentially a flat sheet. So there are no Z coordinates. So all we got to do is put in a 0. And we can keep putting in zeros until we reach the end. And that works. But if I had 1,000 or 1,000,000 data points, that would take a while. So the neat thing about Excel, in case you're not familiar, is that this little program has the ability to automate calculations and stuff like that. And there's several ways to do it. In this case, what we can do is we can we can put in a 0. And if we double click on the bottom right, it will fill the column up all the way through to wherever you have data. So it tries to predict where you're trying to put in zeros, and then it does that. Or it tries to predict what you want it to do, and then it does that for however many cells you want. So we could do 0. And then I can just, oh man, I misclicked. Let me go back to that cell. Okay, I've selected the cell. And when you go to the bottom right, your cursor changes. And now you can double click, and it will do it to those values. The reason it did that is because originally, that's how far I dragged. And so it kind of has a little bit of memory. So I'm just going to drag all the way down here. Okay. Now, the next step is very important because you wouldn't have known you made this mistake until you laser cut your fins and then you realize that they are a factor of 2.5 times smaller than what they need to be. The reason for this is even though we did all of our design in inches, and it exported in inches, when Fusion reads this file, Fusion assumes that the units are in centimeters. So we actually need to give all of these numbers as centimeters in the file. Now what we can do is we can convert each of these from 0 inches to 0 centimeters by multiplying by the conversion factor, which is 2.54. At the end of the day, that's 33 different calculations, and that can take a while. So we'll take advantage of Excel's automation to make it a little bit faster. Whenever you want to do a calculation with numbers in Excel, you have to click on the cell, which I already have, and then type in equals. This is saying this cell is going to equal some stuff. Then you say what it's going to be equal to. It's going to be this cell times 2.54. That is the actual conversion between inches and centimeters. 0 times 2.54, wowzers, is 0. Sanity check. Now I'm double clicking and it's not letting me do it because it doesn't know which way I want to go, because it turns out we have data in 2 dimensions. So I just drag downward here, and it's going to take each of these values and multiply them by 2.54. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over to the left, and it's going to do the same thing for the X and Y columns right here. All right. The last bit of data conditioning that we need to do is that when Fusion reads this file, it is expecting all of our data in these 3 columns, and that's not where they are. We need these numbers in that location. So we copy, and then we paste, and then all of a sudden we get an error. It's a reference error. The reason we're getting this error is because we have these numbers depend on these numbers, which depend on these numbers, and so we have what is called a recursive definition, and essentially it's saying some number times 2.54 times 2.54 times 2.54 infinite times. So that could crash. So it doesn't do it. So how do we paste this? So let me undo that real quick. And I've copied these, but just in case, we're going to copy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to paste special, and we're going to paste just the values. And what's going to happen is it's going to copy, oops, let me actually do that properly. Oops, not selecting the full selection. I'm fumbling because I'm panicking. Let's slow it down. Let's slow down our clicks. The machine is getting ahead of us, and we don't want that to happen. So, paste special. And there we go. Now you'll notice that these values now updated. At the end of the day, we don't even need them. We just need these values to exist here. So if you want, you can just leave these here. They don't do anything. They're meaningless to us, but you would have to remember that, what these numbers represent. And if you wanted to get back your original values, then once you save this file, you can't undo it, because then that starts a new memory train. And so you just have to be aware of these things and have systems that work for you. Everyone's got their own little way of doing this. For instance, some people would have done this as a calculation, and then they would create another sheet and then bring it to the front, and then they'll just, so let's actually do that. This is a more proper way to do this. So let me go back, and these are the selected values that I had originally pasted. I'm going to copy these. Oops. So I'm going to copy these. And then what I would have done is I would have added a new sheet, dragged it to the front, which I have here. And then, again, I'm just going to paste the values. Oh, it didn't actually let me. Let's go back over here. Copy. And we'll paste our values. There we go. And then we'll just check to make sure that they are consistent. 5001, 5001. Okay. All right. Now we just save our file, and then we're good.